We have built tools for construction industry, emergency preparedness space, healthcare, insurance, legal. Even if the majority of industry, let's just not using it, your competitor is, and they're going to take that money. Sometimes a company comes to us and says, hey, I have this problem. Can AI solve it? And maybe it can, maybe it can't. You don't need to necessarily stick AI into every hole, right? At the end of the day, AI is fantastic, but you're dealing with people. It's not in a bubble in and of itself. You need a person.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now, let's get it started. Hey, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins, your host, and I'm in studio with Olga Topchaya. How are you today?
Hi, Rick. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I hear the weather up there in New York is kind of chilly.
Yes, it is.
I am not jealous at all. Down here, 71-degree weather, shorts and no shoes. I am in a happy place.
Well, we'll be there soon enough.
Woohoo! Folks, if you haven't done it already, please make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you can get updated every time we drop a new episode. Now, let's get started. Okay. So you've been playing in the AI space for quite some time. I would love to, but I know that you didn't start there. So I want to give our audience a little bit of history of, where you came from, where you are, and what you're doing now.
So before I started Lapis, I spent about 10, 12 years in marketing and product. So my background is on the business side. The latter part of my career was in tech companies, but prior to that, it was all kinds of industries and companies of all kinds of sizes. And then the last 6 years or so was specifically in tech. Then I went on parental leave. And at the point that I was supposed to be coming back was 2022, when there were just mass layoffs at that point in tech. So I decided, all right, I'm going to take a step back and, see kind of what's out there while I hang out with my baby. And that's when I discovered generative AI. It was kind of completely by chance, serendipity. And I realized this is just incredible. It's incredible technology. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before. And this was before the ChatGPT boom. So no one was even talking about it at that point, except in very small circles. Even developers were barely talking about it for some reason. So I said, okay, I want to learn everything I possibly can. And I just kind of head down and dug deep into groups and talking to people and joining hackathons and just every possible thing that I could find about generative AI. And then eventually my foot in the door was as a prompt engineer for a company called Copy AI. They were one of the very first companies to start playing in that space before ChatGPT rolled out. But then once ChatGPT rolled out, there was a contract role. The contract ended, but then I got another contract. And this time it was on the business side for an AI company. They were doing really amazing things. And then I got another contract, and it was also in prompt engineering. So all these contracts kind of kept popping up because everyone wanted AI. And that's when I realized, all right, well, it's now time to start my own company. So I had the business element. I had the prompt element. I had, very good understanding of generative AI and LLM specifically. At the end of the day, I'm not a developer. I don't have a background in computer science. However, I knew many people at this point that were AI developers. And so I knew that these are the people that need to work for me. I need specifically highly skilled AI developers that focus on this technology. And so pairing together with them and my business background and my knowledge of AI, this is how Lapis got started. So now we offer a complete end-to-end suite of services in AI. Everything is custom. It's a consultancy. So we will first start with analyzing the business. Sometimes a company comes to us and says, hey, I have this problem. Can AI solve it? And maybe it can, maybe it can't. You don't need to necessarily stick AI into every hole, right? So maybe it's data science that you need, or maybe it's just people, or maybe it's hardware. It's not always software. So we will do an analysis first. And then we determine, is it an off-the-shelf solution that's possible? Is it something else? Or do you need a custom-built software? If they need a custom-built software, then we build it for them. If not, we continue working with them, usually in a consultancy capacity for AI, like in, chief innovation officers, basically. And then from there, we build their custom software. We pair very closely with their team, with their executive team. If they have a team of developers, we'll pair up with them. When we build the software, after we launch it, we provide ongoing support. The software is theirs. So we don't charge licensing fees or anything like that. So it's theirs to do whatever they want with it afterwards. Most of the time, they don't have the engineering AI talent in-house to do it, to continue managing it. I mean, so we'll continue managing, but if they have it, great, bon voyage. We'll continue working with them. And then the final step is training their employees to use the tools, to use whether it's tools that are off the shelf or it's the software that we've developed. Because at the end of the day, AI is fantastic, but you're dealing with people. It's not, in a bubble in and of itself. You need a person. And if you have the best strategy for AI, you have the best software for AI, but your people aren't using it, or they are using it incorrectly and they don't know what to do with it, they don't understand it, you just blew all the time and money out the window. So we don't rely on product managers that are internal or executives or someone else to do the training. We do the training for them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the first things you said, or one of the things you said earlier on, is that you heard about generative AI, and you mentioned that came before ChatGPT. Can you help us understand the difference between the two?
Well, ChatGPT is generative AI. So there is no difference. What I mean is I started with the early versions of generative AI, which is now like a dinosaur in comparison to the technology that we have now and to what we are able to do now. But it's the same thing.
And go into what generative AI is, just so we're clear on, perhaps the capabilities, and you just get a clearer understanding of how it could potentially impact what we do.
There's the visual, the audio, the video, and text. These are all forms of generative AI. AI by itself, the older forms of AI, has existed for decades. Are you familiar with the Turing test?
Oh, not off
So
the top of my head.
the Turing test, by Alan Turing, he said, when you cannot distinguish between someone talking to you behind a wall, right, and you think it's an AI or a human, you can't really tell the difference, right? That's when we have learned, we have created true artificial intelligence. If you don't know if it's a human or a machine, we've passed that years ago, probably decades ago already, right? Eliza, this was a very old form of AI. Maybe you remember it. It was also like decades ago, right? You think you're talking to a person. Siri, that's AI. You think you're talking to a person, right? So AI has existed for many, many years. Machine learning, where you give AI some kind of input and then it can learn from it. It's existed for a very, very long time, right? So AI is not new, but this form of AI that we are seeing right now, this is new. And it is new in the sense that it creates output from the learning that it has done. Okay. There's content that it can create, like from basic text that you give it. For example, it can create an image. You say, give me a picture of a cat, and it'll give you a picture of a cat. Tell it to create a video for you, of, I don't know, birds flying, right? Now we're able to do that. Or write me a blog post, and it's going to write you a blog post, right? This form of AI, this is new. And same thing for audio, right? It can create from pieces of small snippets of audio. It can create an entire movie, right? Or however long, I guess, recording, right? So that is generative AI.
Wow, wow. Sounds kind of scary. I mean, it sounds like something that could really be abused. I mean, do you have
Absolutely.
thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. We need ethical AI. I believe that we need guardrails. And when we build our systems, we put guardrails in place so that it doesn't get abused. You have to have security features because it is ripe for abuse. There are states right now that have passed certain laws and regulations against how you can use AI, what you can do with it. Europe has passed regulations. Europe is actually very strict right now. So it's a bit of a double-sided coin because when you regulate too much, you stifle innovation, right? So you kind of have to maintain a balance. The Biden administration, they had proposed an act. There was an executive order, which has now been rescinded, but they had proposed an act that never went fully into effect. I actually don't believe it was ever enacted. It was just proposed. So you do need a balance between government regulation and, you want to make sure you're innovating because otherwise China is just going to come in and they're going to do whatever they want, right? But yes, it is ripe for abuse. So we need people who can put in those security guardrails in place when they are building it. And we want to make sure that we are educating people on ethical use and what they can do, what measures they can take to make sure that they have those guardrails set up.
So with that said, is there a body or is there an organization that is tasked with helping to protect really the public from nefarious folks and AI itself, perhaps?
I am not aware of any independent organization. There are some I guess I've heard of. I don't know how effective they are. That's why I even forgot their names. That's how I feel inefficient they are, that nobody even knows about them. So I don't think there's any that are really impactful that I'm aware of. I do know Anthropic. It's not an independent organization. It's a for-profit company that created Claude AI. They are very keen on ethical AI and creating ethical AI. They constantly put out information about it. Can you trust them? I don't know. At the end of the day, they are a for-profit company that creates AI, right? So I don't know, but you can trust them. But when you interact with Claude, you do see that it will refuse to answer certain questions, right? Same thing with ChatGPT. It won't answer certain questions, right? It won't tell you how to build a bomb. There's things that it just won't do. Claude, I think, has probably the best guardrails in place. They are constantly holding competitions to see if someone can hack them.
Yeah.
And they will pay people to hack them so that they can understand the vulnerabilities in the technology and then set up those guardrails so people aren't able to do that going forward. And then you have the government, right? That right now it's independent states that are taking action.
I was wondering in particular about the hacking, the ability to hack and all of that good stuff. So I'm glad you answered that. So one of the things, I guess, as a business owner, I think in terms of, or I want to understand better what kinds of things I could potentially expect from AI. I'm a company, I've been around, I don't do AI. Let's start there. Where might I open the door, so to speak, to start bringing AI into my company? Obviously, it depends on the type of company, but just say my company as a consulting firm.
So if you have absolutely zero experience with AI, you have never touched a hands-on keyboard, a good place to start is ChatGPT or Claude. And I usually say, whenever you feel the urge to Google something, ask ChatGPT or ask Claude. They're both good. Gemini, it's another good one. I use them for different things. So just choose one, and instead of Googling, ask them. That's a good place to start if you have absolutely zero concept of AI and generative AI specifically. If you already have an understanding of how to interact with the technology, which is by the way, very simple. Like my 85-year-old grandmother, literally, I taught her how to use it. And she uses it. She's a writer. I've been a writer for decades. And so the way she uses it is she adapts her writing for different audiences, different styles. She will say okay, now write it, for an older kind of audience or a younger kind of audience, write it in more conversational language or write it in more scientific language. She'll use it for that. She'll use it as an editor, right? So this is just an example of a creative type of use, right? Very simple to use. I promise you, if my 85-year-old grandmother can learn it in 15 minutes, so can you. Moving beyond this like basic skill. If you are a company and you are not really using it, right? Start with an off-the-shelf product that where you can get a free trial. I always say do a free trial or freemium. A lot of these tools are like really cheap, like $5, $10, 20, $30, right? But still just do a free trial. So there's probably a tool out there for literally anything and everything under the sun that AI does. They often don't scale well or they get expensive with scale. What you can do is about this. Give me an example of a problem that you're trying to solve.
One of the things I have to do a lot is I have to do process engineering. So with that, I'm creating like the visual process or creating the written process. And I have to take that and I have to, kind of analyze the best flow and then be able to present that to the client.
Okay, so maybe something like an infographic. Does that sound about right? An infographic. Okay, fantastic. So you can go to perplexity.ai. It's like ChatGPT, but it's specifically designed to be at its core an AI search engine. And you say, give me a free or low cost AI tool that creates infographics. Start there. That's the very simple, basic terms, and see what it gives you. And then just try it. The thing with AI is that you should just experiment. So before like going full all in, get an understanding of what it is. And there's so many tools out there that you can just try one, try two, and that'll just give you a little bit of a taste. Eventually, you're going to need to figure out which one is the best for you. You're going to need to figure out the strategy, right? Because maybe the infographic, for example, isn't the best place for you. You need to get some help, or maybe you can figure it out yourself, but you're going to need to think more strategically about it. Maybe you'll get away with an off-the-shelf solution. Many companies do. That's why these tools are so successful. Or you might need to have something custom built if you can't find a tool that meets your individual needs, right? So that's where I would say you would start. Be careful with YouTube trainings videos. I usually say the louder they are, the less they know. Having said that, there are fantastic YouTube materials out there. There are fantastic articles out there. So by all means, you can go to Perplexity AI or ChatGPT and say, hey, I have this problem. How can AI solve it? Give me a YouTube video for how AI can solve it, or give me an article for how AI can solve it. It's going to be very rudimentary, possibly wrong, right? Because there's so many nuances, right? A lot of it is theory. And this is kind of where we come in, right? Because so much of what you're seeing and hearing about AI is either theoretical or hobby projects or, small scale, or they're just done in isolated lab experiments. And when you need to exercise it in the real world, right, where you're again dealing with people and it's software, you need to make sure that a person can log in. You want to make sure that the security measures are in place so that it's not hackable, for example. Maybe you needed to integrate with some of your other systems, right? They need to be able to talk to each other. That's when it gets complicated. And then you have to move away from the theory into the practice. You can get started with some of these, tools and some of these methods that I mentioned just to get an understanding of the potential, let's put it this way. And then you begin to get grounded in reality.
What if you have like a real challenge? So for example, I have my calendar and I have my tasks and I have my project management and the ticket desk and I get messages in Slack and messages in Teams. And it's a lot to be able to manage in one place. And of course, if it's happening to me, it's happening to other people in my organization. How does your team, come in and help us develop a solution that's going to enable us to be more productive, able to communicate with our clients better, able to, respond, react to, different things that are coming up, and even potentially, predict some things that we might have to address that, just because, just based on patterns, we have to, think about.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I'm very happy you asked that. So the first thing is we identify one problem, one challenge. You just mentioned many different problems. So we need to identify one thing. And this is where I believe most companies, when they try to implement AI, is where they fail, is because they try to swallow the ocean and solve all of these problems with one solution. I'm talking about like multi-billion-dollar companies will make the same exact mistake, right? So start with one thing. Build your tool in such a way that it's not just a throwaway POC. You need to build it in such a way where you can layer then things on top of it and features on top of it that can begin to solve other problems. It's possible to do it that way. It's more complex, but it is possible to do it in that way. So start small and then expand. And this is where we can come and help you identify what is that one problem that we are going to start with. We want to start with the lowest hanging fruit and then move on from there. Once you have mastered that problem, once your people understand how to use that tool to solve that specific issue, and we can like actually map what are the results from that tool, right? Because we can look at how much time has it saved you. Let's say it saves you 15 minutes a day. Well, you calculate very simply, right? Over a course of a week, a month, a year for one person, how much time has that saved them? What is their salary and their benefits, right? That you're paying them for that time. So you can very easily do these calculations. Then once that has been solved, then you move on to the next challenge. But one problem, one step at a time.
That's brilliant. I mean, I think what I like about that response is that, we were talking earlier initially about, just getting a piece of software and trying it out and seeing if it works and, and that sort of thing. And I'm sitting here, I'm going, okay, that may solve like one piece of the pie. But when we look at it from the perspective of, okay, this is, we're going to do this in layers. So we're going to prioritize this. We're going to make it all work together versus, getting something, throwing it out, and then, getting the next level thing or whatever it is. That's smart. I love that approach. I think related to that, I have to ask the question about, realistic expectations, though, as you said, from the perspective of being able to solve a problem, are we looking at like an 80% solution, 90% solution? And I'm saying, just taking one issue, how much of a solution is realistic to expect, as a business?
It depends on the problem. It depends on the resources. And it depends on the people who are using the tool. That's the simple answer. It can vary anywhere between 5% to, I don't know, 90% probably. Right? I would not advocate for automating 100% to AI. It's gonna make mistakes. That's just the case. But so do people, right? This is why, you have a person, it's good to have a second pair of eyes. I always have a second pair of eyes or a third pair of eyes, right? It's the same exact concept, right? You make mistakes, AI makes mistakes. It's not perfect. Don't expect 100%. But this is where we can begin to identify, right? How much time can this solve, depending on what your problem is and what are your resources? What is your risk tolerance? That's another big one, right? Because AI, it's new, absolutely. And with anything that's new, there is going to be inherent risk. There's no other way around it, right? But at the same time, like technology is changing. So, like there's a project that we started about 6 months ago, which is not a very long time for project if you really think about it, for a full scale like mass software to build, right? Because if you really think about what we're doing here is like we're building mini companies in a way, because they're mass scalable solutions used across thousands of, by thousands of users. So we started a project about 6 months ago where we're almost done, but in that 6 months, the technology has changed so much that now that we're done, we're already beginning to think about the upgrade to this. We're not throwing it out completely, right? Like I said, we always build in mind, how we can layer on top of it and anticipating that things are going to change. But in that 6 months, we can already upgrade. And the things that we thought were problems like 2-3 months ago are no longer problems. It's done. And then like 3 weeks later, something comes out because, we're sitting there like, oh my God, we can't do this. This is the limitation. And now it's like, this new thing came out. This is not a problem anymore, right? Well, it's constantly changing. I don't believe it's going to be 100%. Whatever it is that you create, I don't believe it's ever going to be 100%. But depending on what the problem is, what the resources are, those and your people, that's what's going to determine how much of it can be solved.
Interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. I was on ChatGPT the other day, and it was just like, hey, now we have deep research. I'm just like,
Right,
that's
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Like months before that, you had to do some like pretty advanced like prompt techniques in order to get it to give you, more than 5 website results beyond the 5 websites. Now it's like, cool, you wait 15 minutes and it gives it to you. Same thing. And then Google is, same thing for Google. And by the way, don't spend $200 on the deep research from ChatGPT. Perplexity is going to give it to you for free. They have their own version. You can check for free. That's fantastic.
So how unwise, I guess, would it be for, as a business owner to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to wait till these products mature more before incorporating it into my business? Do you feel like it's a wise decision for business owners to wait to start incorporating AI into their company?
No, it's because your competitors are doing it. I promise you that. Even if it's a small subset of your competitors, there is not a
Yeah.
single industry that has not been severely disrupted by AI. Not one. Even the traditional industries that are typically like super resistant to technology and digital transformation, like legal, is typically like an old school kind of industry. They use like fax machines, right? Construction, insurance, doctor's offices, right? The fax machine people, right? Those cargo and clipboard type of people, right? Like emergency preparedness space. All of these industries are now, there's companies in there that are incorporating AI in some degree. We have built tools for construction industry. We've built tools for the emergency preparedness space. And we did some work also in healthcare, actually insurance. My second earliest client before I even started Lapis was in insurance. So like all of these industries, right? And legal, there's now a specialized LLM, large language model, for the legal industry specifically, right? So even if the majority of industry, let's say, is not using it, someone from your competitor is, and they're going to take that money.
Now, tell me something. If I am an admin person, and we talked about a few things. We talked about productivity. We talked about, I was thinking specifically about like the legal space where we've got, our legal aides, people that are doing research and the writing and that sort of thing. If I'm a business owner, how do I equip my team and my admin team in particular to be successful, as I'll say parts of their job or parts of their requirements become easier. So instead of, going through, a bunch of, legal books, to find the particular case, blah, 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 we can just look into, whatever tool and find that, right away. So it doesn't require, not as much work is required. So what does that evolution look like in that role?
Yeah. So that's a fantastic example, right? Every role is going to be different. People need training at the end of the day. Like someone with AI knowledge has to come in and train them in that specific domain and identify what is the problem. But just to give you that one example for legal cases, right? Go to ChatGPT, go to Perplexity. ChatGPT, turn on the browser feature, not necessarily the deep research, but the browser feature. Gemini has a research feature. Turn that one on and say, there's like a longer prompt you can do. This is where the training comes in, but you essentially want to give it the context around the case. You want to tell it like what state you're in, what is the court that governs the case. Is it the Supreme Court, the family court, which branch it is, the first judiciary, second judiciary, whatever they are. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But I know all of these nuances, they definitely matter. And then you say, here's the case, find me case law that will support my argument. Or what is the argument that I need to make in order to support my, my client, right? It'll give you a bunch of cases. Verify, for God's sakes, verify that these are in fact true cases. You definitely want to look. I'm sure every lawyer out there knows that, right? You want to see the cases that are more recent, right? Because they can be overturned. If it gives you a case from 2005, maybe there's something came out in 2024. So you don't know. But that's something every lawyer already knows regardless. So just verify that the case has not been overturned and that it's close to what it is that you need, right? Because maybe the argument is buried somewhere deep within the case, but it can still work. So again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all these nuances, right? So I don't know, but that's how you can find it. And this is like some basic way you can do it.
So as a business leader, I'm looking at my admin person, and what their role might be is to learn how to become a prompt engineer. But
I would use the term prompt writer, but I mean, you can kind of use prompt engineer.
Okay, sorry.
There's overlap. Prompt engineer typically writes code, computer code, although not always, because it is a role that is perpetually evolving. People hear the term engineer, they might think, oh, you want a computer scientist or something like that. So if it's a non-technical person, they might be less intimidated by the term prompt writer or prompter than they would be by prompt engineer, even though the end result is kind of probably similar. Anyways, that's a disclaimer. Back to the topic. They shouldn't be just a prompt writer or prompt engineer. They should know their domain, right? Because otherwise it's a prompt. Like I said, like I'm not a lawyer, so I can write you a fantastic prompt, but at the end of the day, you're the expert. You will need to know, is this an output that is accurate? Does this case law actually support your case? Because it's AI, it's technology, it's not infallible. It can make mistakes. It can make things up sometimes. It's called a hallucination, which is a phenomenon that can be solved by certain frameworks and guardrails that you put into place to a high degree, but it still very much exists. And this is where I say, don't outsource everything to a machine or to a person that just writes prompt. They need to know their job, but they should be good at writing prompts. And once they get good at writing prompts, you've just like text that person to excel in their role.
That's fantastic. So what the expectation, it sounds like, is that they'd be able to write a prompt and they would be able to get better information because they'd have access to more information. And then they're going to evaluate that information, determine the accuracy, and produce better results, as a result of this.
Exactly. And
Okay,
there's many things you can do with it, right? Like it's information, so there's research, but there's, there's content production, whatever it is that you need to write, content synthesis, whether anything ranging from a blog post and an article to full on executive reports, right? Like I use it for design all the time. For example, I produce a full podcast that is 100% AI generated, and all the voices there are AI generated, right? It sounds like people, but there's not a single human there. I'm not advocating for that to be, I'm not saying that is the route to go. I think we should have podcasters like this one that we're doing now. The reason I created it is just to demonstrate the capability of the technology with audio and with text. But there's many different things that a person can do with the technology.
We got to put a link to that podcast in your show notes.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. I saw an album in promo that somebody on LinkedIn did. It was just like incredible. He like wrote songs and everything else.
Yes.
This is so cool.
Music, video, images. Yeah. Most of our clients, they will use it for like operations, for content, for HR. It'll be anything ranging from like, it's really the productivity stuff, right? So anything from like employee onboarding, employee training, things that just like people are constantly asking that are like the same, that is just a time suck. So anything that really is a time suck that can be automated. One of my favorite projects that we recently wrapped up was an IT ticketing support system. Because if everyone wants to know how to reset their password, so that could cost you like $15 a ticket because you got like 2 IT people and they're just resetting passwords all day long, right? Huge savings that how much you think about that you can offload. So those kinds of use cases, competitive analysis, right? That's a big one. And when you're linking it with data analysis, unstructured data. So you can draw insights from non-numerical data from text, right? And then produce those reports, interviewing people, getting the feedback and the insights from those interviews that you've recorded when you have transcripts. I mean, I could just go on and on and on about all the different ways. I'm going to stop there, but this is where, again, we can come in and do the assessment and see where it'll be like the lowest hanging fruit for you. Marketing is definitely like a really big one for sure as well.
Wow. I think I'd probably go on for another hour asking questions. But if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they've got a problem, they want to talk to you about or want you to solve, what's the best way to do that?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn directly. So I'm very accessible there, or they can just fill out the contact form on our website. But yeah, LinkedIn for sure.
Cool. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we call it a day?
Yeah, I would say, just start. Don't wait for it to be perfect. Just start experimenting. Like I said, try ChatGPT, try this tool, try that tool, and see where it takes you. But you're not doing it. Your competitors are. I promise you that.
Absolutely. I always fear as you were saying, like the guardrails, just making sure it's correct, what you're putting out there.
Yeah. So again, for the guardrails, you need those in place. On the technology perspective, you want those in place so that it minimizes the incorrect information, but do not remove the human. We need people. You're going to get it high to a degree where you can definitely increase productivity, reduce your costs to generate revenue, find new revenue streams, for example, but don't get rid of your people. You need them. I promise you're always going to need them.
I love it. Olga, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Folks, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We will catch you next time.